Good afternoon. It is Thursday, February 2nd, Groundhog's Day. It is, we're going to spend some minutes with Eric Bilthorn from Principal Assistant, Department of BGS, and he's going to review Section 5 with us. So, Mr. Bilthorn, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to pass out some pieces of paper because
Thank you.
we're all better off with paper sometimes.
Yes, we are.
I am here to talk about the Building Communities Grant Programs. And there are actually several different kind of subdivisions of this program. Some are managed by BGS, some are managed by AG, some are managed by the Vermont Arts Council. And one is managed by Historic Preservation, if Laura Treishman hasn't already talked about the barn program. So
She did.
okay, so this is more of that, but with some specific categories. I should say the Building Communities Grant Program was developed, near as we can tell, maybe 15 years ago by a member of this committee by the name of Philip E. Scott, who later went on to other government work.
He did away with the pork section.
He did away with the pork section. I guess they used to call it the deli section.
Oh,
Right.
that's so fun.
So what used to happen was legislators would come in with individual requests, and based on their charisma and connections, they would get things done. And the now governor felt that that wasn't necessarily the fairest way to do business, and so he and his compatriots on the committee came up with alternatives. And there's just one.
How many pages are there?
Well, we have 3 different grant programs. So what I'm handing out is the list of requests that we got this year and what we funded. The way the committees work is the Committee on Committees in the Senate and the Speaker of the House appoint members from their bodies, and the governor appoints a few people. There are a couple different ways that people get appointed to these committees, but essentially it's a mix of legislative folks appointed by the governor, and usually a couple of subject matter experts. Like on the recreational grants, we have someone from the board of Smuggler's Notch, or someone from a major trails organization. And so we try and have subject matter expertise in each committee. There is the educational facilities, human services facilities, recreational facilities, and then the one that gets really fun is the regional economic development grants, which are submitted to us through the regional economic development authorities, whether it's NVDA or whomever your local, and maybe it's CBOEO, which is in county. Yeah, so you get the idea. And in some cases, even towns will get involved in New Haven or Fairhaven, excuse me, Fairhaven. Their select board or their town government gets pretty active in looking at their downtown and thinking about economic development projects and helping local businesses make their submissions. It's one of the few places where we can put capital funding into private sector operations, provided that A, they have a business plan, and B, that they can show that they're going to create or preserve jobs. So it's really about job growth in the different towns. And the committees there is a different committee for each group of grants. So there's one for economic development. There's one, they lump human services and recreation human services and education together on one committee. And then there's a recreation committee. And so those committees meet in the fall and they review the applications. We always have, if you go to the bottom of the spreadsheet, you'll see the total ask for each grant category, and it's almost guaranteed to be at least twice as much as we have to give out. The other thing to know about these grants, they're up to $25,000, and it has to be the last money in on a project. We're the cavalry, because the project needs to show that it's real, that it has community support. Someone up in the House said, "So is this seed money?" I said, "No, it's mulch money." This is the final contribution that takes it over the line. And you know, we also work, although we don't have a formal formula for equitable distribution. Everyone who participates in the committee is very conscious of spreading the money around the state and making sure, oh, you know, we've taken care of Bennington County. Oh, look, they have 12 and they've gotten 3, you know, so we try and make sure that everybody gets help. I also noticed a I think healthy bias for smaller projects. So if you're asking for $5,000 or $7,000, you're more likely to get all of it. We encourage people asking for grants to ask for what would be perfect for them and what they could get by with. And sometimes the committee will even get into, well, it says here they want an oven and they want a slop sink. We can afford the oven, but not the slop sink, so they do the math and they give them that much. So we try and help people finish things. And you know, in the human services grants, that could be a community kitchen, or it could be the floor of the senior center, or you know, we also try and look at how broad the population is that we're going to impact with this contribution. Recreation, it could be, I remember one year, I think it was Randolph, just needed like $700 to move their monkey bars across the park so that they'd be next to the other play area. And it just, like, over time, it just wasn't working, and there was a row, you know, and so that was like an easy one to love because there was a lot of grassroots participation. It's a one-to-one match. So if you ask for $5,000, you have to show that you have $5,000, and it can't be in kind, it has to be real money.
Okay.
And we demand receipts, invoices before we pay out. So we do require a certain level of organization. And the last thing I want to say before I submit myself to your interrogation is that while I do have the pleasure of participating on behalf of the commissioner in these committees, it is Judy Bruno who does all the work. She builds the spreadsheets, she created the application, she sends out the notices to everybody, takes it in, makes sure everything's right. We do a lot of hand holding. You could fill out this application with a crayon and we'd still take it because we want to make it easy for people without a lot of administrative overhead to be able to benefit from the program. So Judy lives for this program pretty much from, you know, the first week of July when she's sure that she has the money through the end of the year as we take in the grant apps and then organize the meetings. And that's pretty much how it goes. And it's very important, one more thing, and I really will stop and read, is that one of the ways that people learn that this program is available is their local legislator tells them about it. That's our best PR machine. So
I was gonna ask if you're confident that people know about it.
I think they do. I think they do. There was one year where there were no applications from Addison County, and we communicated with the legislators and the economic development folks, and lo and behold, there were 11 the next year. So yeah, they do.
Interesting.
You know, people talk.
So do you send things pre-formatted that we can send out and distribute?
You know, I think there was a.
Something like this. Or...
This is on our website.
Okay.
And you'll notice this covers all the grant programs, so it includes the barn grants and the historic. It's a good roundup, and it also has all the contact people for each program. And there are some projects that are borderline. They could go either way. Maybe it's a barn, but you want to turn it into a wedding venue, or you know, like they're. And we discourage double dipping. And if we find out that you've applied to 2, we'll get you into 1. And because we have subject matter experts on the committees, sometimes there will be a project that has applied, and in the time since then, we know on the committee that, oh, they just got a federal grant, or they really don't need this as much as this person needs this. So there's a lot of kind of cross-pollination and communication, and we really try to do the right thing. Allison Clarkson runs one of them, and I'm trying to think who else is on there. It's always, each one has a very different character, but we all revel in kind of getting to the same place and getting the money out on the street.
And are these all the asks? Because we see 0 on some of them, so
Yeah.
these are all the
Yeah.
asks.
Yeah, we have a general practice of if you get one this year, you're not gonna get one next year, come back the following year, but some people will apply 2 years in a row and we keep track of that. Sometimes the committee will feel that it's not fully baked. That's a judgment call on the part of the committee. And sometimes we just don't have enough money. We did increase the appropriation, I think it was 2 capital bill cycles ago, there was some money floating around, I can't believe it. But we managed to channel that towards that program. I remember we did the library up in South Hero, the South Hero Library. We've done a couple of projects there over the years. We did there's like a chicken restaurant in Pittsburgh that wound up being the main caterer at the World Cup this year. You put a little money someplace and then you drive through that town, you're like, that's that thing, that's great, we did that, we gotta stop, let's try their stuff. So it makes the tour of the state a lot.
Yeah.
Of course we do. I don't know where anyone ever gets a free lunch. Yield to the chair.
Questions? Yes.
So I see 3 categories here. Do they match up with your human service rec economic development categories, or do they fit into one of them? I'm just trying to match them all up.
This was created by the Agency of Commerce and the marketing people. So if facilities, these are the sort of jurisdictional divisions.
Okay, so do they match up at all with what you
It
just
doesn't
said?
match up
It doesn't.
exactly. The facilities grants are BGS. Historic preservation
We heard from them the other day.
is
Okay.
the other day.
Okay.
I believe ag fairs is ag.
Okay.
And then, well, and it probably says in the back too.
Yeah.
Called ag, ag fairs is ag,
Arts Council.
and then the Arts Council does the cultural facilities.
Okay, so everything on these spreadsheets
Is,
fits under facilities.
under
I'm just trying to
facilities.
figure this all out.
no, yeah, there's a
Thank
fun,
you.
and I even looked up the statutory enabling language on this because the syntax drives me crazy that human services and education are both human services. So one is human services, and the other is human services educational. Mary Hartman, I don't know.
A follow-up, if I may.
Please.
So do all of the things that we're talking about now fall under that section
That
1
is
on here?
Well,
Where
no,
do I
section
find them?
section 5.
Okay, they're all there, like I don't have to
Yep,
look all
no,
over my.
they're all
Okay,
in one
woo-hoo,
place.
Thank you.
In fact, I think
Good to
one of
know.
them, I think the barn grants used to be in the Agency of Commerce section and they moved it over just because it was so close to the others. So now they're all one clump. You can see the total funding amount. Section.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So senators, as you can see, not a lot of asks for a pretty big, we're a small state, but not a lot of asks. So these are perfect opportunities for you to be going back into your communities and saying, hey, what category do you fall under? And have you ever got one before? And let's put an application in.
Yeah.
Right, I actually applied for a barn grant for a previous employer and it was super easy.
Yeah,
I mean, this is 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was great.
Did you get it?
And they're, yeah,
oh, good.
yeah, they were wonderful.
We actually, Judy this year, well, for the coming cycle, she's converted the application to a Microsoft form. So you just go right into the website and type everything in. You don't have to print it out and
That's
scan it
nice.
and send it,
Good.
all of that.
Good.
And the other thing though, it hasn't happened yet this year, it probably will, it was sidelined a little bit for COVID, but there is usually a day at the State House where we invite all the grant recipients to come up and get their picture taken with the governor, and then the fact, I remember like photo ops with Mitzi, and so it was one of the feel-good days of the session where everybody was just happy to be helping out their communities. So that event may occur this year also, which is another way that we promote it.
So Eric, I'm noticing the human service grant, Rutland's not there. I assume that means nobody has asked for it?
That's right.
Two pages full of that one.
We got,
Yeah.
we probably had Rutland in other
Yes, you do,
sections.
yeah.
Yeah, Rutland had one for restrooms at a childcare center, which I thought that was a really good
Yeah.
thing to do to support childcare.
Yeah, we do like, there was one in, I can't remember, it was Rutland or Bennington. I apologize, it's my northern half of the state bias talking, but there was a childcare center that had a play yard that was near the road and they just wanted a fence, you know, so little stuff like that can be a big change for a small operation. So we do hear from a lot of childcares, a lot of summer camps and senior centers. And, you know, sometimes they're trying to do energy improvements, sometimes they're trying to fix their roof, sometimes they're doing accessibility path, you know, fixing their wheelchair ramp. So it's a lot of small stuff that really adds up, and it's a big deal if you're where it is.
This isn't directly on this, but just you saying that, you know, you drive by and you see something that you were involved in. I understand, because I drive around the state a lot, that there are towns that are doing pretty well, and the downtowns have received various methods of state support.
Mhm.
And it would be nice to have that on a map somehow, so that, and this would be kind of a long-term thing, but just to be able to, going through Sharon, you know, how did the state help here? Because one comment I've heard from folks who have lived here 30 years is there are areas that look really good now, that look a lot better than they used to. So kudos to you folks who have been here. But it would just be nice, and that's a long term,
No,
or maybe somebody's doing it already.
I don't know, that we are big, the government, but I recall a few years back that the Agency of Commerce and the Agency of Transportation had a program called, it was like Better Communities, or where they were coordinating grants from Agency of Commerce and Agency of Transportation so that they could focus energy on the downtown and say, we're gonna do the sidewalks and the streetlights and the trees all at once, and we're just gonna come into, you know, St. Albans was one of those towns where they had a transformational experience, and it was because the agencies were coordinating on.
I'm gonna tell you another one that you need to go down through and have the same thought process as Waterbury. We went down through with Waterbury, and if you go down through there and compared to what it was like, it was just an old rundown Main Street and fading infrastructure, and you go down through there now and it's about as modern can be. The sidewalks are just, you know, everything's just so kept up and beautiful.
St. Albans is the same.
Yeah.
St. Albans, you got shrubbery, they got planters, they got, it welcomes you downtown. You really want to go there.
It's beautiful, yeah, and it's lively
In my
too.
city of Newport, I will say the same thing. They've done the same thing, other than we got a hole in the ground, which at some point in time we'll fix up, but flower baskets and shrubs and
Do the fall
yeah,
decoration.
we have a park right next to the city offices now, and yeah, just
So they
really,
haven't
really
done
nice.
anything with the whole.
Not yet, no, we might at some point in time.
Maybe it's
where-
a tourist attraction.
Well, yeah, probably be a
Charge
courthouse,
people a
probably be a
couple bucks
courthouse
to
at
look
some
at.
point in time.
Or a swimming pool.
Yeah, that'd be, you know, but
It's just nice to track progress.
Yeah.
In the Economic Development Committee, we're seeing a lot of examples of good things happening.
yeah. No, the state's very, very impactful. St. Johnsbury, I mentioned the other day when Gus was in here about what they did. They, you know, a big building right in a very important corner of town, and where they just fix that building up, and then the storefronts are filled, and now you look, and then now the other owners are just
Trying to keep up.
they're
Right.
just now they're putting signs up, and they've freshened up, and it does make a difference when you can bring in state dollars where private enterprise just doesn't have the funds or the ability. It certainly will make a big difference.
Yeah, these things can be catalysts for a lot of other activity, so encourage you to tell your constituents about it, and if anybody has more questions, you can ask me. I was thinking about your question, and all it would take is staff time. I know someone's smart enough to do it, but really you would just put all of these addresses and amounts in a database, and then we could map it through our GIS. So,
That's what you should do.
well, yeah. if,
For a student,
step-
the student could do it.
I mean, GIS makes it easy for whoever does
Yeah.
that.
Right, step one, have someone who knows how to do GIS. I know how to tell people to do GIS, but need some AOT folks to play along maybe.
Any more questions for Eric?
No, thank you, this is very helpful.
Thanks a lot,
Thank you for
Eric.
having me, and
Good
I
luck with
believe
class.
the building community story just might continue now.
The next chapter.
Hey, perfect.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you all.
Good luck at school.
Thank you, sir.
Amy,
Hi,
are you ready?
sure.
We have Amy Cunningham, Deputy Director of Vermont Arts Council, and she's gonna go over the governor's recommend for section 6.
Pleased to be here. And I had a couple of slides, if that's what, I can skip them if that's,
Do you have your laptop with you?
I don't.
Okay, then.
We don't, you know what, I think it is
No,
not,
that's
it's not
okay, I can
necessary.
show them, I just need to get it on the screen.
I apologize.
No problem.
We're gonna talk about cool buildings and projects, so I thought it'd be.
Nice.
Look at the pictures and look at me, right?
Six is education.
Cultural
Yeah.
Facilities Grant Program.
Are you section 6? It says section 6 here. Is it section? We have
Might be another
we have an
section.
agency of education.
Oh, here, so I'm from the Arts Council here to talk about the Cultural Facilities Grant Program, which is part of the building communities
So it's under 5.
grants. that,
It's under
Eric
5.
was
Okay,
just-
there we
It's
go.
under 5, it's more of 5.
The second part of what Eric was saying.
Okay, there we go.
So
Thank you.
you want the slideshow here, is this?
Sure, if that's not a problem, it's really okay, Linda, for me to skip those if it's a.
No, we like.
We like pictures.
Do you like pictures?
Oh,
I
yeah.
just wanted to get the right document.
We're visual. Okay, so it's the agenda that needs to be changed. It should say section 5
Right.
Section 5?
Yeah.
Okay.
for future reference.
Okay, and sharing this now. Is this what you wanted?
Beautiful, thank you, that's great. So my name is Amy Cunningham. I'm currently serving as the interim executive director at the Vermont Arts Council. I'm typically the deputy director and here to talk about our cultural facilities program. We're really grateful for the legislature's strong support of this program over the years. So next slide. The Cultural Facilities Grant Program is one of many grant programs that the Arts Council administers in our role as Vermont State's arts agency. As part of our mission to cultivate and advance the arts and creativity throughout Vermont, we know that cultural institutions are key to the health and vitality of Vermont communities. Next slide. So arts and culture revitalizes our downtown, sparks economic growth, helps to build more sustainable communities. There's national research that demonstrates across the country that the creative sector is a catalyst for economic growth, and that's particularly important in rural communities. From our own research, we know that jobs in the creative sector in Vermont make up 9.3% of all employment. That was about 40,894 jobs in 2018. We also know that strong and vibrant arts institutions are key to attracting tourist dollars and bringing in new residents. One data point around that, for example, the majority of millennials and Gen Xers say that they look for communities with a vibrant art scene when they're deciding where to relocate for a job. But most of all, our theaters, libraries, downtowns, town halls, community art spaces are part of Vermont's identity and the character of so many of our communities. So now when Vermont is still struggling from the impact of the pandemic, we know that our cultural organizations are really essential to helping our communities recover and rebound. So, one example, when a theater closes down for a season, as many did during COVID, it's not just the theater that loses revenue. An entire downtown loses the revenue from the restaurants and the shops and the galleries that the folks who were coming to downtown to attend that performance would have spent their money. So our communities need the arts and the creative sector to fully bounce back. Next slide. So in addition to the economic impact, by bringing people together in our cultural facilities and revitalizing these places with activities like performances, festivals, fairs, exhibits, or classes, we're fostering social inclusion, community empowerment, creating an important sense of civic pride. Next slide. not used to having the slides behind me, sorry. So we see the cultural facilities program as a critical part of building and sustaining our state's cultural infrastructure. The cultural facilities grants are administered by the Arts Council in collaboration with the Vermont Historical Society and the Vermont Division for Historic Preservation. These grants go to nonprofits and municipalities to expand reach, improve safety, ensure that the arts are accessible to all Vermonters. These grants range from $1,000 to $30,000, and they all require a one-to-one match. Next slide. So some of the nitty-gritty of what these grants actually support. Some examples include upgrades to electrical wiring and fire alarm systems, HVAC renovations to improve air quality, which is of particular concern now, as we all know, ADA compliance, accessible restrooms, elevators, walkways, hazard mitigation measures like rain gutters, floodgates, sprinkler systems, theatrical lighting and other fixed audio equipment that make the space usable for cultural functions, and environmental upgrades to support collections, care, and exhibitions. Next slide. So since 2001, thanks to this program, we've made 342 grants, totaling a little over $4 million to support theaters, museums, town halls, community art centers, and municipalities across the state. Next slide. So in 2014, we started to track data from the grantees around the vendors they were using and their final reports. So we just wanted to get a sense of kind of some of the ripple effect of the economic impact of these grants. And so from the data collected so far of 400 businesses paid in that period through these grants, so those electricians, folks who are installing elevators, 74% of those vendors were local Vermont businesses, electricians, HVAC companies, plumbers, contractors. Of that 74%, over $1.9 million in grants generated $4.2 million in matching funds, contributing over $6 million to the local economy. And that's just about the contractors and vendors who were hired for this construction project alone. That doesn't say anything about the ongoing economic impact when we've got a usable performance space where people are coming in and buying tickets and spending money. So next slide.
Can I,
Please
just
do.
a comment, usually the multiplier is just a standard multiplier, you say 1.2 or 1 times 2. But you actually have the ratio exactly because you know what you gave and then you know what they spent.
And they have to,
So
it's a
that's really,
they've got to give us receipts, and it's a reimbursable grant, so we know exactly who those vendors are.
so it's a real multiplier.
Are great. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And you're right, there's lots of other multipliers around, what a theater brings in terms
Right.
of broader economic impact, and those numbers are
I'm always
loose
suspect.
at
Yeah.
best, but this
Yeah.
is a real
It's a real one.
specific
Yes.
example there. So now show and tell pictures for some recent projects. Franklin Town Hall received a grant to support the installation of a sound system with assisted listening devices, very important for accessibility, and acoustic curtains for the windows. This will have a really great impact on the ability of all community members to enjoy the cultural events held in this space. Next slide. The Grange Hall, Caledonia Grange Hall in East Hardwick, they received a grant to support electrical upgrades on the ground floor. Having the ground floor of the building electrified again has effectively doubled the functional space in this building. The Grange hosts after-school arts workshops for kids and regular community meals with live music on the porch, lots of other activities for the community. Next slide. Sheldon, the Sheldon Historical Society, they got a grant to support the installation of an accessible restroom and a lift to the second floor meeting and event space. This will more than double their capacity for events, discussions, small concerts, and displays, while enabling full participation by visitors living with decreased mobility. Next slide. Sorry, Linda, you're intuiting when I, thank you. The Broadbrook Community Center down in Guilford. So this center lacked insulation, as many of our old buildings do, made the space prohibitively expensive to heat in winter and impossibly hot in the summer, severely reducing its usefulness. The funding for the insulation will provide Guilford with a space that can be comfortably and affordably utilized year-round by the community for a wide variety of community activities. Next slide. This is the Go to Community Trust in Burlington. So this was support for the installation of a new HVAC system in this space is the formerly known as the Champlain Club. These new energy efficient units will significantly expand use of the building as a community center, performing arts and dance space, and drastically improve their energy use patterns overall. And then here in Montpelier, we've got the Capital City Grange Hall just down the street. They received support for the installation of a vertical platform lift. This lift in the foyer at the accessible entrance will provide access to both the raised stage. There are very few accessible stages in this state. I'm just saying as an aside. And this is one of the few now. And two, it also provides access to the hall's lower level. The project will also facilitate some minor renovation of that exterior ramp to bring it back into ADA compliance and also include some fire safety improvements. And next slide. And then the final example is Ethan Allen Homestead. The Winooski Valley Park District received funding for this creation of the Vermont Indigenous Heritage Center. That's part of this Ethan Allen Homestead campus. This funding will support the construction and installation of custom exhibit cases and the lighting for the display of Abenaki artifacts at this new Indigenous Heritage Center at the Ethan Allen Homestead Museum. This upgraded space will enhance community gatherings, ceremonies, educational programs, workshops, and more. Next slide. So I'm proud to say that we've made grants in all 14 counties across Vermont through the life of this program. 70% of the funding from this program has supported cultural facilities in Vermont's most rural communities, protecting libraries, town halls, and community buildings that serve our most isolated and least affluent residents. The need for Vermont to invest in our cultural infrastructure is critical. These aging buildings continue to be in need of upgrades and repairs to make them safe and accessible for community members. Also, I'll note that these are buildings that Vermont has already made a considerable investment in, and there's compelling need to continue that investment. These grants help to ensure that our cultural facilities survive, that our libraries, our downtown theaters, and community centers are all there to bring us back together again, help communities rebound economically from the pandemic, and create vibrant communities where people want to visit and live and work and play. So I think that's all my slides. Thank you.
As far as the application process, is it just like what Eric was explaining? Is it the same group of people that are awarding these grants? Or this is more monies, this is giving a higher amount than what the last series of grants that we went through. So
Yeah.
but the makeup of the committee same as,
It's
or
not exactly the same, but it's very similar. So there's an online grant process a portal where folks apply. We've got one of my colleagues, Michelle Bailey, has been administering this program on our staff for over 20 years. So she's there to really troubleshoot and help people with the application process, help them navigate, getting the estimates and all of those things, which are increasingly difficult. And then, yes, we convene a panel. Applications come in. We convene a panel. Michelle pulls together a variety of experts based on the proposals that are coming in. So when we're seeing HVAC, air quality proposals, we need folks who have that kind of experience to assess those. We've got folks from USDA Rural Development who help on the panel, a lot of folks from Historic Preservation. I'll say, so they make the final decision, and then that decision is formally approved by a committee of folks that include the Executive Director of the Arts Council, the Executive Director of the Vermont Historical Society, and a representative from the Division for Historic Preservation. So that's kind of the general process. I'll say that one of the things that impresses me a lot about how all of these programs work is that they're often working in collaboration. So my colleague, Michelle Bailey, Caitlin Corkins at Historic Preservation, the folks at Judy at BGS, a community or a potential applicant, folks who are working on a Grange Hall will call one of them, and they work really well together, and they'll often go and do a site visit together and say, and bring in like USDA and Preservation Trust folks. Here's the bank of resources that are potentially available to you. Will help you piece together and strategize, because it can be pretty complicated. So I'm really impressed with how those folks all work together to try and make it understandable and help them strategize. So, you can't get the Historic Preservation grant the same year you get our grant. So what makes the most sense? Or your windows are really bad, or, you really need the wiring first. So helping them piece that together is a big part of what the staffers on all these grant programs are doing.
It sounds like most of the applicants and the people receiving the grants are organizations versus structured towns.
That's it's a good mix. So if it's a municipality, it's typically like a town hall, or if they happen to own the library versus, some towns, the library is completely owned by a nonprofit. So I don't know what that breakout is, but my guess is that it is more nonprofit organizations than it is the municipalities, but I'd have to do a little deeper research on that.
3 of the thing grants here, maybe it was just 2, but I think it was 3 were the Granges. So, I knew the Grange was still active in some places. Everywhere you go, there's a Grange Hall. But there's a lot of them are in disrepair and serious disrepair, and so you don't even know if they're active or not. I can remember my great grandmother, she was 101, and I think she was the youngest member of the Grange. So it's good to see that an organization as strong and proud as the Grange is still being active and receiving monies and being involved in communities.
And they're being really creative about the reuse of those Grange halls in the 21st century. The Capital City Grange Hall is all kinds of dances and events happening there, lots of adaptive reuse for a lot of these spaces.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know this may go back before 2001, but one of the kind of jewels in the city of Rutland is the Paramount Theater. Has your group ever been involved with anything there that I know?
We work really closely with
Okay.
Eric at Paramount Theater.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
and so they have received cultural facilities grants. They've received operating grants from us in a different separate program that we run. Yes, and I just toured the space and got
That they're going to redo? Yeah. gonna be-
they have a whole
Yep.
building. They have so much square footage.
Yep.
So anyway, yes, we have worked to support their efforts quite a bit over the years.
Good. It's a good place.
It's incredible. Yeah.
I saw Arlo Guthrie there, and I saw Don McLean.
Oh, no, okay.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Different things.
yeah.
Nice. I was curious if there's any match involved, or is this an outright grant?
There is a one-to-one matches required.
Okay, just like
Yes.
Sarah talked about, okay, good.
And is it at the beginning, at the end? Can it be at any part of the process? I know they have to have receipts and all that stuff, but the last series of grants we talked about were end of project grants. They were to get them over the finish line. How are these set up?
So typically, the max on this is 30,000. So typically what's happening is that folks are coming in with a much bigger project. So Kellogg Hubbard Library here in town, where I was on the board for several years, and there was kind of a mini capital campaign, a huge range of projects, improvements that were happening. So the total bill was like $700,000, all the things we were doing. And cultural facilities came in and they kind of carved out the discrete project of the new elevator shaft. And so I'm sorry, I'm losing the answer to your question, but basically
Just
there.
about where the money comes in. Can it come in at any part? So like the last one, it had to be the end of the project, what got more the finish line. So this is just you have $200,000 and maybe at some point in time, you guys can throw in 30. It doesn't matter where it comes
And
in.
we'll work with you, let's find the most kind of competitive piece of this,
Yeah.
of the project, that's gonna make the most sense for cultural facilities funding. And then, yes, they submit their receipts and it's a reimbursable grant after the fact.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be the end of the project.
Yep.
The other.
What else?
It's great. You have the map. Were you here when we were talking about a map?
The map, yes, I heard
Where
Eric.
did it start?
We can, yes,
Exactly.
we were just
Yeah.
talking, there's a nifty new little software called Data Wrap, I don't know how new it is, new to me, called Data Wrapper, that will help you do some of these maps. I'll tell Eric about it. Sure, you'll be thrilled to hear about it.
Yeah.
Great,
Thank
I
you, Amy.
really appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time, thanks so much
We're good. Thank you very much.
Good work.
for the work. Thank you, Linda.
So then the quicker than we thought.
Yeah, that's fine. It's just what's gonna happen. So it is what's gonna happen, that's for sure.
We'll hold it against you that we got on roll.
Yeah. Committee, what else do I work? Got a few minutes.
Oh, I don't know. I know the house is busy today with another bill. I don't know whether that'll eventually impact what we're doing here or not, probably will. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, that's big.
I guess so.
This is, just, Linda had got us some new sheets.
No changes.
No changes, but we're marking up the other ones, and so if somebody wants them, here you go, so just kind of handy to have them.
Thank you.
And,
So it's the
why don't you
same
give me
thing.
back one?
It's the
Got a
same.
staple, so I have to.
Yeah, I have to have one.
Oh.
Yeah, I handed them all up, so I just wanted to be able to keep it fresh and all of that, so,
That's great, thank you.
yep.
It's got a staple in it, will help me. Never know what
That's-
order.
yeah.
I like having duplicates of everything. Now, this, that was on our,
Yeah, just something
is
that
that
Eric.
new? or is
Yeah,
it
I don't think
updated?
there's a whole bunch of changes on it, but Eric, they just brought it over again,
Oh, because that's,
but,
There were a few changes from when you got the notebook. This is more up to date, but the changes are minor. This is
That's
just,
fine.
this is more up to date than the notebook.
this
Right.
is,
Okay,
Binder.
then I'll get rid of the other one.
And then we also have the loose one, so we have three
this
different ones
binder,
now.
yes. That one is now updated to this.
Okay,
yeah, so they'll always find your notebook and they'll update them and they'll do stuff like that, so you might want to keep that other one before throwing it out, because they'll come and find it, and they'll actually replace pages in that as
That'd be
well.
great.
really?
Yeah,
Do they tell us that they?
oh, sometimes.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
owls.
yeah, sometimes they'll ask, so, yeah, sometimes they'll ask to leave them
I'm
out,
gonna put like something on top of mine, so I know if they do that.
Yeah. yeah, so.
Okay. Hmm,
Interesting. Well, that's helpful. That was great.
Is there anything you need from us, Mr. Chair?
No, I think I'm very proud about how hard everybody's working. There's a lot to learn here and, the questions are good. I try to, if you guys aren't asking questions, I'll try to lead some off to get some conversation started. I can say last year, we didn't get a chance to ask a lot of questions because, Joe liked to ask a lot of questions. And so I think it's important that we get a diverse, ask of, what's going on. And I'm pretty easygoing about, what we ask and all that. I really like the committee discussion part of it. I like to make sure that everybody's aware and involved with what's going on in their communities, and I'll throw in my thought process about, hey, listen, to me right here, only to have this amount of people ask for these grants right here, I look at it and say, well, I know people in my district certainly could have used some help here, so I gotta go back as a senator and do a better job of making them aware of it. So, don't take offense to any suggestions that I ask, or I might point out for you, because, it's money. And I think that you've made a very, very great point about it'd be nice to have a map to go around and to see. And I know, Brian, you've been here long, Dick, you've been here a long time, but it is fun to go around the state and to see projects that you've been involved with. It really is fun to go and see. And when you have somebody with you, it's fun to say, hey, I was involved with that. I was involved with that. I was involved with that. So it is kind of neat. It's kind of fun to go around and know that.
How are towns notified? I should know this too. Do they send out? Do they send out to different departments in the town?
It might be a question that we might ask them next time.
Yeah, I just wondered.
Because I don't know that they do that great of a job. I think it really gets down to, and it might be them that should do a better job of it, but really ultimately, I think it should be us. I know we had an event up in Newport where there were 7 things that they had, and the state was up there and they were doing, and I sat out through and I have 25 towns and there were 7 things, and I'm not very great. Everybody thinks I'm great on computers. I'm not. I'm like an old dairy cow. I know how to get to my stall and get to it well. And so 7 all the town clerks on 7 different things, 25 emails that I ended up writing down. And by the time I was done, I had memorized a lot of them. But I'd sent them out, these programs to 25 different towns, 7 different times. So 7 times 25 is how many emails I did.
But that shouldn't be your, we should have a system.
We should have,
That's what
yeah,
I'm saying.
and I
You
agree.
take the time to do it.
Yeah.
Others don't.
Yeah,
And I think, I should ask them.
Yeah.
How do they know about?
Right.
Because some towns don't have a lot
Right.
of communication with the state.
so I think that's why we're hearing a lot now that they're investing dollars, there's $3,000 now going in to help identify some of these programs. I know we saw that in transportation, but I do know this. I do know that when all of a sudden I get an email from somebody and then I can go back and say, hey, I sent you that to the town clerk. And then the town clerk said, oh yeah, I got that. You know, it does make you feel good that, you know, that you made aware, but I agree with you, Senator Mazza, that it could be a better way.
This is why this was established, this program. Many years, and I've served on this forever, but the chair or members of this committee would pick pet projects back home and get them in the bill. Well, that meant this committee had a lot of, you know, and others would come in and say, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? So when Phil Scott got chair, one of the things him and I decided on, no more pork. Let's go through a channel. Everybody's open. That way, I don't go home and say, look what I got from my town. I mean, that was a common thing around here, even in transportation. When I took over the chair in 1990 in transportation, it was all these pet projects that different members of the Senate would do, or House. And they'd say, well, I got a bridge in my district, I'll put it in the bill. And that's done away with since the day I took it. Never. Everybody goes through I tell them where to go. If they want to request for a salt shed or whatever, they go through the channels. There's grants in every department. That's the way it should be.
Right.
That way, everybody's treated equally. You don't have your, but this was common years ago. This stuff, oh my God, it was awful. Now, remember there was a senator from Caledonia years and years ago. He used to get all these pet projects in the transportation bill, and then he'd get on the floor and vote against the budget. So he was a hero on both sides.
Oh.
So finally, one day, so wait a minute now, I'm going to add this little policy here. You get your little pet projects, because Crowley was chair, you get these pet projects in here, and you vote against the bill, all these projects are coming out of here. Oh God, he almost had a fit. I mean, he was shaking and shaking, but he used to be a hero, go home and say, look what I got for you. I got this bridge fixed, but they say, and you voted against the budget. Yeah, what a hero, So he had it both ways. No, and I saw the unfairness, and I just couldn't believe that we all like projects. Let's go through open policy, you apply. That way, if you meet the criteria, but nobody can say, well, you're the chair, you got this, you got that, or, it's.
Well, even in here, I mean, tell them a little bit about the deli menu, because Eric had made reference to it. So it's like a lot like it was here when there was a senator that was from my district, and he was chair. I mean, there's just things that used to happen.
We had the bill divided into sections to report on the floor, and I get up to report my section. And the night before, the chair had redone some of the bill, which I didn't know. He had a project in there of his own, so I'm reporting the bill, and I'm looking, and there's whatever it was up in that district, and I'm saying, wait a minute, I never seen this before. Well, he had worked with the council, redrafted another sheet, and here I am sitting there embarrassed as hell because I'm reporting something I know I have nothing about. So we got him a project. And boy, those things were terrible. I couldn't stand that. So that was but he was good at what he did, and he knew how to get projects in. But everybody should have a fair shot, regardless where you're from.
Yeah.
If you want to tell your constituents what's available, that's fine. It's good business, but it can get out of hand for transportation, especially roads, bridges, pavements, and in here too, there's all kinds of stuff. As you saw that grant program, which people request, and everybody's treated fairly.
Right, and it is important that they get the word out to all the
Yeah,
towns.
that's right. So they,
Yeah, the regional commission, I agree, we should be supplemental.
yeah, that's
to
right.
that.
Yeah, to back it up or
Yeah.
something and say, well, but they should know exactly what's available, because some towns don't do a lot of communicating with the state.
Right.
So you hear a lot about the women's facility, correct? So you hear a lot about that. I'll remind you where we're different than the House Corrections and Institutions. They will deal with policy. We deal with buildings. It doesn't mean that we can't talk about policies or have an opinion on policies, but we're mainly a buildings committee. But sometimes to know what the billing needs to be, you need to know a little bit about what the policy is.
Judiciary.
Yeah, judiciary will do the policy.
They do, the House does the judiciary and.
Yeah. So what we're gonna do is I asked Linda to bring in a lady, what's her name? Linda, right here. So she's gonna tell, she's from Maine, and her man, Amanda Wolford, and she's been in front of the House, and she is pretty instrumental in, we had something last year that you guys are gonna hear reference to. Brian and Dick is gonna know about it, but you guys might not, but it was called the Hawk Report. And it was about prisons and designs of prisons and ideas about prisons and all of that. And you know, we're trying to be a kinder, gentler state as far as how we, I don't even know, and I apologize if this offends to anybody who might be listening, but rehabilitate, because I don't know that we even use that word anymore. But this lady has done something pretty spectacular up in Maine. And so we're going to get her in and we're going to listen to her and some of their ideas about how they get some of the people, you know, the structures that they build and what they do and all of that. I'll also tell you, don't lose sight of the men as well as we start to go through this. Only 10% of the population incarcerated are women, and we have some other male facilities. And so as we look through some of these programs and all of that stuff, just keep an open mind about that. They're starting to use some of these processes on men as well, and they're starting to get really, really great results. As far as again, I apologize if rehabilitation is not the word that they use now, but they're starting to do that. So we're gonna have Linda's gonna work on that and get them in. We might have some guests on that one right there. From what I understand, it's a very powerful presentation. And so being on Zoom, maybe we'll ask a few people, maybe we'll ask Sears to come in, Senator Sears to come in, and maybe on health and welfare, on some others, maybe we can have a little bit of a joint as far as on that. And Linda, I see you writing that down. So something I forgot to say. Yes.
Did the other institutions, did the House institutions hear this already?
They have.
They have.
They have heard it, and I meet with Alice Emmons at
You do.
BGS and whoever else comes in sometimes every Thursday. And again, to keep you guys tuned, you know, to keep us apprised of what's going on and all of that stuff. A lot of what I've talked to you about already, again, I hate to be repetitive, my story is my story, and I always want to make sure that it's there, but there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to get headed down the path. And as you heard me say yesterday to the folks that were in, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to get headed down the path. And we worked on one day and then it's going to be gone the next, depending on how the funds go. But anyways.
So I have a question about adding things to this list. Like I heard from some employees of the, I don't know what the site is, at Barry, where the social workers work and where someone was murdered several years ago.
Yeah.
They are concerned they still don't have any protection. There's still no, fencing around the perimeter of the site, and they're still terrified, a lot of them, going into work because of the residual trauma. How does something like that get on BGS's list? How does that get on our list? I don't know what the steps are to do something like that.
Again, would you raise your hand? Okay. I would say be careful about, I learned something from somebody, I learn from all the time, and it's from Senator Mazza, and it's about transportation, and it's about people asking about projects and all that stuff. So I'm not gonna tell you how to do it, I'm just gonna say use your sense to what you know, and that's why I kind of explained what this committee does. Sometimes you might just have to refer them to the committee that might have that. So that might be something that goes to judiciary, or it might go to another committee and all that and say, hey, listen, thank you for that, but let me get your concern. Let me get you in front of the right committee. So you might be a traffic cop a little bit to get them in the
I just don't know the difference between, like, why would that be judiciary? It's not a courthouse, or is it a courthouse? I
Well,
thought it was like a
AHS,
human service
right,
agency.
Right.
So.
Right, and so it's out of our purvey. And if you want to really, really, really upset a chair, overstep your bounds. And so that's what happens sometimes if you really get something going down the way. Chair people sometimes can get territorial about you overstepping your bounds. So if you don't, so just be careful with that.
So I bring that up personally.
Yeah, just say, well, I would say the person, I would say,
What's your suggestion for me to follow?
I would say the persons that are bringing that up and say, let me get you in front of the right people. I hear your concerns and especially, but I need to get you in front of the right people who can do something about it.
Unless it's a bill.
So it's definitely not ours, just because it happens to be a building general.
My
service.
thing in the past, when I get an issue that I don't know anything about,
Yeah.
I'll call that department and I'll have them respond to the constituent. Let them talk to the constituent, give them the answer.
I just don't want to send them to the wrong place, because then they're gonna get the runaround and I haven't helped at all, right?
Concern yesterday about a trailer park, whether it's illegal or something. So I'm gonna find who would handle that. I went to legislative council. Who would I ask? And I'll have them call the constituent and explain it because it's that thick. I don't have any knowledge of it because it's not a bill. If she was addressing a bill, I could specifically say, why don't you come and testify? But if it's not a bill, if it's a subject, I'll just refer that. I do that all the time.
I just don't know enough about the whole hierarchy here of where
Well,
to plug them into.
I'm gonna give you some advice.
Yeah.
Go to Bloomer.
Yeah.
Go to Bloomer.
That's a good-
That's
Yeah.
a good idea.
Go to Bloomer. And he will,
Okay.
He'll tell you where it goes, yeah.
if he'll tell you exactly who to go to talk to. He might tell you 4 people to go to talk to.
That works.
But when I'm in that same situation as where you're at, that's who I lean on.
Because it's better to
It's
stay on the
right?
middle sometimes, because you can't win.
Great.
Because you're giving the
Thank
advice, and that's,
Yeah.
you want someone in charge to give the advice or recommendation.
And as anything you find out in life, this isn't your guys' first experience. You're very accomplished people. You're here. But you find out that if you say something wrong to somebody, well, you said.
Yeah, you said.
You said. And that's kind of where you can get yourself into a little bit. Well, you said, well, yeah, I'm sorry, I did say that.
Every now and then we get calls about, more vehicle. So I call Mike Smith, say, Mike, I got a problem, here's his phone number, call him. And they work it out. So that way I'm not the middle person that says,
Right.
you do this, you do this. So you should have a contact or more vehicle. The guy's Mike Smith, deputy commissioner.
Was it a constituent?
I don't know where they live. It was a
Oh.
group of employees.
Because
that
then
they
that's
don't
the
feel
other
safe.
avenue for
Yeah,
you.
that's right.
You could get that person's senator or rep.
Right.
And then the other thing I've done in the past, if it comes down to the fact that you know that a particular committee is going to be involved in it, go to the chair of that committee and just give them a heads up, say, hey, I heard from Jill Olson and here's her concern. You may or may not want to get involved. Here's what I told her. That way, at least you're helping that committee.
Done your part, yeah.
Yes,
Are we still gonna try to go to beta? Is that
we
still on the
are,
list?
but
But when the weather
When
gets
the weather
better.
yeah, when the
Yeah,
weather gets a
yeah.
little better.
I just wanna make sure it's still on the
Right.
list.
Well, he's
Yeah.
gonna get an airplane electric.
Yeah.
Anyway, he wants to take a ride with you.
Yes,
All right, cool.
yes, I want to do that. I'd like to go up there myself, but we'll,
Boy, are they spending money there, growing.
I know. We can have two
Millions.
filters. I'll go too if you wanna check it out.
It's unbelievable what I hear. It really.
It's really
growing.
impressive.
Millions and millions of dollars with no return. I mean, it's all
Mm.
going out because there's nothing, there's no one coming in.
there's nothing they're selling yet.
That's right. And
Right,
so
they're
they're
developing.
Right.
all the charging and everything else. So there's investors. In fact, they stopped taking investors. So so many people.
Really?
Because they're into big millions. They only got 300-400 employees or something. It's huge. So they know the future is gonna be, I guess, electric. airplanes.
Yeah, well, they're talking about, because we're in transportation together, where Senator Moss is the chair, and we're putting huge dollars into these airports. And with the hopes, I think that they're kind of looking at these electric airplanes. Of course, they have a shorter range, so they're talking about these airplanes being able to do, instead of trying to fly a jet into, one of these things, flying them in and then hubbing them out,
Right.
and electric and clean and all of that. So, yeah.
And the stuff they're transporting has to be done fast and you don't wanna go to.
Well, they're
the
talking about doing
airport.
cargo, doing Amazon and FedEx and
Oh, it was
UPS.
hospitals originally.
Yeah, so they're talking, you know, and I don't know if that's a model that's been out there, but hey, you gotta talk about something, you gotta talk about what your goals are, so they're talking about, you know, stuff such as that, instead of having, tractor trailers, deliver this stuff, where, you know, do something that's clean and, no carbon and have them deliver like that.
Interesting. So the state airports are being upgraded.
Yeah, we're spending a lot of money on them.
Rutland's the only one outside of Burlington that has commercial flights. Rutland,
Okay,
that's the only one outside. The rest are all private.
like general aviation.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
fly in with small planes.
We've been doing some charters. Stowe's busy with that. I know the Newport one, the Coventry one's busy with charters, but yeah, the one that's, with,
But the Rutland was a flight to Boston.
Right,
3 flights.
yeah.
Wow.
Three flights to Boston.
3 down, 3 back.
There was a couple, wow, after that, because it really did.
what's the tickets for something like that, do you know?
$79.
Are you kidding me?
Wow, that's cheap.
And you can leave your car at Rutland Airport for 2 weeks free.
Wow.
And if you use JetBlue, when you land, you're in the same terminal, you don't have to take your shoes off again, go through that whole process. Oh, I
How
checked
big
it
of a
all
plane
out.
they fly out of? I don't know, pretty good size plane.
It's 12 seats,
Oh, just 12,
no
okay.
props,
Nice.
Cape Air.
Yeah.
But jets come in and out of there now too, with UPS, lands a jet.
Yeah.
And there's private jets coming and going.
Yeah, it's a good airport for that part of the state.
Well, they extended the runway, well,
Yeah.
6 years ago, maybe.
Built another building for Quinlan and everything. Yeah, it's nice. Huh. That's the only place they fly, Boston, right?
Yeah, Cape Air only goes to Boston.
That's what I thought, yeah.
But I think they're the only ones in Vermont that do that, right?
Yeah.
Because Burlington
Burlington
doesn't
doesn't do
even have a
Boston.
flight to
No.
Boston.
But from Burlington or Albany, that's more of a big hub, you could go anywhere.
Right,
Mm.
but a lot of people want to go to Boston. I mean,
True.
that's good for Rutland.
Yep.
Yeah.
What else? Any other questions?
I have
Any
one
other
for
thoughts? Yeah.
I'm just reading this thing. The only one on Grand Isle.
Is there one great?
To convert an existing shed into a heated and toned space for housing with Zamboni. Do you have a rink?
They, on the lake. They do it on the lake.
They put the Zamboni on the lake.
Wow.
I read a couple of years ago, and they have the Zamboni on the lake. Yeah.
No kidding, I never knew that.
They don't have a rink. It's on the lake.
That's
Dick,
pretty nice.
We're gonna have, this person right here, and it's from your district. Do you wanna do that one? We gotta get them in. Do you know that person? It's from Grand, so is it Hero, South Hero or Grand Isle? Where are they from? Isle of Lamont, as a member of parole board for whatever.
Okay.
So we gotta do that.
You have his resume?
I don't know that we have that yet.
Before I hand it in, I have.
Well, we get them we'll get them on Zoom or whatever
Okay.
first and do it
Oh,
like
yeah,
that.
we gotta do
Then we'll
that.
get them on there, but I just wanted to make
Yeah,
sure
that's
that
fine.
you were aware and that we'll get them in.
No,
Oh,
I asked you to send the resume to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I did across the hall. We had somebody take it.
So what this is right here is that somebody's on the parole board and we have to approve them, we have to do it like that. You did one the other day, and so if it's in one of your guys' district, if it comes before in front of us, I'm gonna ask you guys, hey, this is your person, do you wanna do this? So, that's what that's all
And
about.
it's just parole board that we.
Yeah, it's just a parole board, but we still have to approve.
Every committee has-
Interesting.
Last week I had one for the public safety commissioner.
Yes, you spoke
So
to.
did transportation.
I
You
see.
get the ones here that pertain to this.
Oh, yeah,
committee.
there's a couple, 300 appointments.
Yes.
Yeah, so as they come in, I'm gonna look at whose district they're in, and I'm gonna ask you guys, hey, if you wanna do that, I'd like you to do them, but you don't need to, but I'd like you to do them, and if, it's like anything, you just ask for help before.
Many boards, you don't have to report it verbally on the floor, they're just automatically on the calendar. But commissioners and secretaries have to be reported.
Okay,
Right, and I want those people to associate with where they're from, with you guys, so as they come in, I'll say, hey, here's this person here, dude, so. And then any questions and all that, just ask, we'll get you through all of that stuff.
okay, good.
What else? Anything else?
Thank you.
I just want to thank you guys. You guys are working really, really hard. You're doing a nice job, and I think we've come together well as a committee, and we're learning. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I like that you ask these people's questions. Some of the questions what you just need to ask. As I say in my personal life, there's no dumb questions. Just if you ask a question. Well, that's the way it is.
Across the hall.
Across the hall. So just don't be afraid to ask a question.
It's true.
But the biggest thing is, if you get done that, and you don't understand what was just said, ask it again.
Thank you, I appreciate you having that attitude.
In a different way. So you need to understand as you ask that question, you really need to understand it. I just want, you guys are doing really, really well. And then we're almost soon here. I want you to start looking down through these sections and see some of the things that you are comfortable with. And the other thing is, look down through there if you want to hear from anybody. Let's get them in.
Okay.
Let's get them in as far as stuff. Talk with Linda, and then we'll get them on the calendar.
We'll be going through the whole thing anyway.
Yeah, we will. We will be going through it section by section. If people want to come in, and that's the thing as well. I don't have to worry about it with this committee, but you hear it from time to time. These people are in asking for money. That's what they're in, asking for money, and they're nervous and all of that stuff. And
every year we have the dry hydrant people come in. And I never knew what that meant for a long. The dry
yeah.
hydrant, what's a dry
I know,
hydrant?
I didn't either, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
dry hydrant, you
Doesn't
put
make
water in a
sense,
hydrant.
yeah.
But they come in every year for, and then I found out what they did, it made sense, but dry hydrant, I couldn't, I always thought water was a hydrant.
Yeah, instant water, just that H2O, right?